So, you've probably spent months obsessing over pristine living rooms and, beautifully staged kitchens. But suddenly, you're sitting at a desk, staring at something way less exciting, yet literally infinitely more important. I'm talking about the residential real estate sale agreement. It's incredibly dense, it's packed with legalese, and honestly, it's enough to give anyone a mild panic attack. But take a deep breath. Today, we're totally demystifying this document in our explainer. We're going to take a guided tour through all this paperwork, and we'll use the contract's very own built-in line numbers as our trusty map.
Honestly, it is completely normal to feel totally overwhelmed by real estate contracts. You are about to make one of the biggest financial decisions of your life, right? And the paperwork definitely reflects that weight. But I want you to grab a highlighter, whether that's a physical one or just a mental one, because we are going to translate this deeply intimidating stack of paper into plain, actionable English. By zeroing in on very specific line numbers, we'll turn what looks like a mountain of legal text into a super straightforward, totally predictable checklist.
Okay, let's look at our itinerary. We're going to tackle this document in bite-sized, logical phases. First up, who represents you? Then, the property and price. Third is funding your purchase. Fourth is title and due diligence. And finally, number 5, inspections and conditions. We are making our way from page 1 to page 8, step by step. Let's get into it.
Section 1. Who represents you? We are starting right at the very top of page 1. Before we even breathe a word about the house or the money, the contract establishes exactly who is sitting at the negotiating table. Now, what's really fascinating here is how the document actually forces everyone to declare their allegiances before a single penny is even discussed. Right up there at the top, lines 1 through 40 lay out the final agency acknowledgement. It lists the buyer's agents, the seller's agents, their respective firms, and their license numbers. It is all about total 100% transparency right from the jump.
Looking specifically at lines 4 through 5, and then dropping down to lines 27 through 29, we see a super critical distinction. You actually have to check a box declaring the working relationship. You'll see an option for an agent who represents you, the buyer, exclusively. That is known as buyer agency. But what if both parties are represented by agents in the exact same real estate firm, supervised by the same principal broker? Well, then that broker becomes a disclosed limited agent for both you and the seller. The contract is just making sure you acknowledge and consent to exactly who is advocating for you.
Section 2. The property and price. Moving down our map to page 2, we hit the absolute core of the deal. What exactly are you buying, and precisely how much are you paying for it? Burn these line numbers into your brain, lines 59 through 65, because this is exactly where the purchase price is officially calculated. It's not just some big, intimidating number blindly thrown onto the page. The document actually breaks it all down so you know exactly where your money is coming from and when it's due.
So that total purchase price on line 59? It isn't just one number. It's really a sum of 4 smaller slices. You've got line 61, which is your initial earnest money deposit. Then line 62, any additional deposit. Line 63 covers the balance of your down payment that's due at or before closing. And finally, line 64, the remaining financed balance. The contract literally spells out that the sum of these 4 lines must perfectly equal your total purchase price. It's just simple, transparent math.
Now let's see how this translates into what you actually get to keep when you finally buy the house. This is a huge point of confusion for a lot of buyers, but lines 68 and 81 clear it up beautifully. Line 68 defines attached items, or fixtures. These are things permanently attached to the property, like built-in appliances, plumbing, and planted landscaping. Those definitely stay with the house. However, line 81 defines personal property. Freestanding items like that fancy slide-in refrigerator, artwork, or unattached furniture, those leave with the seller unless you explicitly write them into the contract right here. Literally, if you want that nice fridge, you have to write it down.
Section 3. Funding your purchase. Okay, so now that we know the price and what you're actually getting, this section of our tour navigates exactly how you are going to pay for the whole shebang.
So the crucial point here is how the contract views your money. When it asks about your funds to close the deal, take a look at line 96. It specifically defines them as liquid money. That means cash or funds that are immediately convertible to cash that are available to you right now. It absolutely does not mean money tied up in a house you haven't sold yet or a stock portfolio you haven't liquidated. You actually have to explicitly declare if your funds are liquid or if the entire transaction is contingent on you getting those liquid funds. Now, if you aren't paying all cash, you'll jump down to lines 147 through 150. Here, the contract requires you to literally check the box for your specific loan program.
The seller really needs to know your financing type because different loans have totally different requirements. You'll indicate if you're using a conventional loan, an FHA loan, federal VA, or even if you're asking the seller to carry the financing.
Okay, pay really close attention to this timeline. I want you to think of these deadlines as your absolute best friends, your escape hatches. If you are financing the home, you have specific contingencies built in to protect your earnest money. On line 123, you establish your appraisal contingency deadline. If the appraisal comes back and says, hey, the home is worth less than the purchase price, on line 127, you have a strict timeline to either renegotiate or just walk away. Similarly, on line 159, you have the loan contingency deadline. If your loan falls through or just cannot occur by this date, line 161 gives you a very narrow window to notify the seller, unconditionally terminate the transaction, and get your deposit refunded.
Section 4. Title and due diligence. Turning to page 6, we enter the due diligence phase. We've talked ad nauseum about the money. Now we are talking about the legal reality of the property. This section is entirely about making sure there are no hidden legal surprises just waiting to ambush you.
Check out line 200. Within just one single business day of the effective date, the seller must order a preliminary title report. This report is huge. It shows who actually owns the property and if there are any liens, easements, or weird legal issues attached to it. Once you receive it, line 206 gives you a strict window, which is usually 5 business days, to file formal written objections to any unacceptable matters on that title. And listen, if you don't object in time, the contract just assumes you accept the title exactly as is. Section 5. Inspections and Conditions. Our final major landmark on this tour is the physical condition of the property, and this is anchored right starting at line 214. This is where you actually make sure the house is physically sound.
The contract is remarkably candid here. Line 215 explicitly states, real estate agents are not qualified to conduct such due diligence and inspections. It is literally warning you in black and white to hire licensed professionals. Your agent is a fantastic negotiator and a market expert for sure, but they are not a structural engineer or a plumber.
Grab that highlighter one more time, because lines 229 through 246 represent your ultimate physical escape hatch. This section right here is the absolute core of your inspection rights.
Lines 229 through 246 perfectly dictate what I like to call the inspection dance. First, line 229 gives you the right to have professional inspections done at your own expense. Then, line 239 allows you to request repairs or corrective actions from the seller based on whatever you find. Finally, lines 241 through 246 dictate the resolution. If you and the seller just cannot agree on repairs, you can unconditionally disapprove of the property within your inspection window, totally terminate the transaction, and get your deposits refunded. But remember, if you say nothing, you accept the property as is.
Finally, as we wrap up our tour of these critical pages, the agreement makes a point to call out specific physical red flags. It does this by asking direct yes or no questions. For example, line 260 asks if there is a private well for human consumption. Line 262 asks if there's a septic or on-site sewage system. And line 264 asks if the property was constructed before 1978, which, as you might know, triggers lead-based paint disclosures. If any of these boxes are checked yes, specific addendums have to be attached, which gives you even more detailed information to review.
And just like that, we've navigated the most crucial elements of the agreement. By using these line numbers as our map, this incredibly dense legal contract actually transforms from an intimidating wall of text into a manageable step-by-step checklist. You now know exactly where to look for your financial timelines, your physical escape hatches, and exactly what stays with the house when you move in. So as we wrap up this explainer, my final question to you is this. Now that you actually hold the map to decoding all this legal jargon, don't you think understanding the fine print is the absolute most powerful tool you can bring to the closing table?